Today's episode is brought to you by applaudable.net.
If you turned up at every training session and made every training session the same, not only would they not get the physical benefits of that change brings, but they'd get bored.
So the concept of creative thinking and changing the way that you do things as well to drive yourself forward and succeed. Do you want to touch on that?
Yeah, so I think creativity is a really useful concept for all of us. And I often say to people, because one of the things that creativity offers us is it's an impetus for motivation. So if you hit a phase in your life, and whether it be in sport, whether it be in business, whether it be in your relationship, whether it be in your life, and it's all feeling a bit vanilla, and vanilla's okay, but sometimes we want it to be a little bit sparkier than that. So if you're feeling a bit flat, then it's always a sign that there's something about your motivation that's not quite where you want it to be. And one of the ways to spark your motivation is to think in creative ways. And what I like is that notion of the possibility. What's the possibilities that we might have? What is possible and what's not possible. And because when we get caught up in the I can'ts, that we're actually saying things aren't possible. So how can we challenge ourselves? What if we did it differently? It's interesting. Even the notion of writing the book for me as a personal process is there's lots of people who are probably watching this podcast who are thinking, yeah, I could write a book one day. Maybe I will, maybe I won't. And I was one of those. And then one day I went, well, what if I did it now? What if and so at that moment, that's what opened it up for me to allow me to kind of do that. So when we entertain the possibilities, and even if they seem like silly possibilities, that we don't necessarily act on everything, but what it does is it challenges us. And I think if we look at it from a team perspective, and with all your experience in basketball, I'd be interested to hear your thoughts on it. But my experience with teams is particularly successful teams. And if you take a team like the Fire, who've had a great deal of success over recent years, which has been great as a North Queenslander sitting watching their success, that does not happen by accident. And the other thing that's interesting with the Fire is if you actually look at the personnel who've been at the Fire over years, we've now in this most recent era, we're about to start now with our third coach. We've changed the board. Players have changed. Our fabulous Susie retired at the end of last year and now has her twins keeping her busy and all the rest of it. So lots of changes have happened, and yet the team's managed to maintain success and to do well. And as a basketball team, they can't turn up this year and replicate what they did last year and expect things to be any different. It's exactly what you said. If it doesn't challenge you, it doesn't change you. And what for those years when we've won the premiership, every other team is chasing your tail. So you can't turn around and do it the same way next year because everyone's going to be trying to replicate you anyway. So how could we do this differently? What do we take? Success leaves clues. So what are the clues that we've learned from this last season? What do we want to take with us moving forward? And how can we do this differently? What's going to be interesting? And that's important for the players too, because you would have worked with enough players that if you turned up at every training session and made every training session the same, not only would they not get the physical benefits of that change brings, but they'd get bored, and bored athletes don't perform well. So creativity adds that excitement and the possibilities of what we can do.
Yeah. So, and you've hit the nail on the head. I think every training session I do, I make sure it's different and it's got something new that even I haven't done before.
Yeah, good.
It's a constant learning process. So I'm writing a program, so I'll just find a new drill or something that's relevant to what we're doing and inject that. And I think if you were to ask my athletes, they would tell you that no two training sessions have ever been the same over the course of the last 3 years, because we're all constantly growing. So, but yeah, I understand the importance of that, and that too, I am creating drills, and they're my guinea pigs. So I'm always creating my own content. And drills and doing things differently, which gives me a uniqueness because they're not getting it anywhere else. So I understand completely those concepts of trying to be creative, and it does break through some barriers, and you learn a lot of things, and you have a lot of failures in being creative. That's part of it too. Is you've got to learn from, if you're just doing things the same way every time, you get to a point where you might perfect that, or mastery becomes an issue. Not an issue. Mastery is a good thing, but there is a point where mastery occurs and you want new things to actually change and improve you in other areas. If you've mastered an area, you go, well, what haven't I mastered now? What do we need to work on? You're constantly looking at that in sport. Is there anything you'd like to add on that we haven't covered?
Like you said, when you go through a change, and whether it be an athlete coming to the end of their career, I work a lot in the defence space where soldiers are transitioning out of defence and then into civilian life and so forth, after serving their country and looking after us for all of these years. When you go through any sort of change, that's challenging. And so it's not it's not unusual for us, particularly if it's a change that's imposed upon us. So say an injured athlete, that maybe has their career end, but also too the athletes who get to the end of what's been a fantastic ride and then it all changes. So there's a chapter in the book called In Your Corner, which is really about reinforcing the importance of people in our lives and particularly at times when we're struggling, and whether that be turning to our friends, turning to our families, or even seeking professional support. So there's a chapter there that looks about who's in your corner, and particularly about I talk about the type of support that you can gain from different people, and also understanding your own needs in terms of what do you need from those who are around you, and not assuming that our friends and our family are mind readers and can work that out for us. That maybe part of our responsibility in the journey is to think about, communicating what we need, and communication is such a key part of that. But also thinking about our role in the corners of others. How do we look after the people around us?
Thanks for joining us for a basketball conversation. Feel free to start a conversation of your own with other Ozswoosh superfans by commenting below. And I look forward to sharing our next conversation with you soon. I hope you'll join us again sometime. Catch you later.